So much, Paula, and thanks everybody for being here. So I'll be sort of moderating and just kind of a roadmap because I always like to know what the journey I'm about to go on is. I'll say a few introductory things, explaining how we got started and how we operate, and then I'll pass the imaginary microphone to Alex, and then Dre, and then Matt and Cleanup will be here there on the end, and then we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A because we all really love answering questions. So start thinking of your questions now because we're excited to answer them. So this is our slideshow, right? So this is a photograph of Homes While You Wait. This is us at Looking Glass Theater. You can see we've got our typewriters. Some of us are posing in a goofy manner because I think that's one of the biggest things that we try to do is bring a fun approach to poetry. So that was us at Looking Glass in 2019 when we were in the lobby before their Frankenstein. And then this is us more recently at Chicago Artisan Market in Ravenswood. And so I'll get to the rest of the slides after that. But our first thing, our mission is to provide an unexpected and decontextualized encounter with poetry. And I'll say more about that, but it was brought up from the Miami Poetry Collective, where our co-founder, Eric and I, are the co-founders, and our third co-founder is Dave Landsberger. And he was getting his MFA down in Miami and became a part of this collective that the weather in Miami is consistently a little more clement. And so they would usually do it outside on the actual street on the third Friday art walk event in that neighborhood in Miami. And then he moved back up here because he's from the Chicagoland area and decided he wanted to kind of try to have something like that here. And so our very first one, after he asked me if I wanted to do it, was at Wicker Park Fest in 2011. And it was just us and his dumpster-dived Quiet Deluxe typewriter. He had just found it on top of a dumpster, rescued it, and so it was him and me, and then also some students from 826 Shy who had been doing a poetry unit. So we all just sort of tagged in, right? We got our topics, tagged in, wrote the poems. It was super fun. We wanted to do it more, we wanted to do it again, and that is when Plattner came into our lives. It's like I manifested him. I was just telling everyone that I was getting into typewriters, that I wanted one, and that we were doing Homes While You Wait. And our mutual friend and Evanstonian, who I don't know if she's on the Zoom, maybe if she is, shout out, Sally Berge, who teaches with us at DePaul, said, if you love typewriters and poetry, you've got to meet Eric Plattner. And I did. And I don't want to steal his thunder or any of his remarks, but he's an amazing poet, trained at the Iowa Writers Workshop, and also a self-taught typewriter repair person. And so once we brought, that's what I mean about manifesting. I was like, this is like I couldn't have imagined a more perfect being. And so he expanded our ability to have typewriters and therefore to have poets exponentially. So we did our next one in November of 2011 at the now defunct Dose Market, which is very similar to the Artisan Market, just sort of this indoor space for artisans to sell their arts and crafts. And then after that, we just kept adding more and more poets. And now we have an active roster of, there's just 4 of us here, but we have about 24 to 30 people who kind of rotate in. And so now that this works, I'll change the slide. Here we are, we do, to speak more to the mission of Decontextualized, this is us at a wedding out in Carpentersville. But we try to set ourselves up where people are expecting to have some kind of entertaining experience or some kind of cultural encounter, but they're not necessarily thinking poetry. So we've done, events at the Adler Planetarium, the MCA, we're doing Harold Washington Library Poetry Fest this Saturday, which is always a favorite. We've done all kinds of street festivals in different neighborhoods. As was mentioned in the intro, we do private parties. So our whole thing is we want to be very much in the Chicago community, but not attached to any one spot, because we want to share the poetry well, and also we don't want to become too expected. And we're aware that, look at us, we're so fun. This is the street festival. It's a Southport last summer. One of my friends on Facebook said it looked like we were about to pull off some kind of jewel heist, and I like that. So our whole thing is very and I think I know Dre and Alex are going to speak to kind of the community aspects, but our whole thing too is we understand that a lot of people just out in the community don't necessarily think of poetry on a regular basis, or maybe when they think of it, they think of it in a negative way because it was taught to them poorly, it was presented as intimidating, it was presented as a mystery they couldn't solve. And so with our little script, which is we set up with the typewriter, people give us their name and a topic, funny, sad, serious, and we write a poem in 10 to 15 minutes. even people who think that they don't understand poetry or don't know what to do with it, understand that script of like giving a name, giving a prompt, giving $5, which goes to a nonprofit, and then coming back. So I think anybody who wants magic or enchantment in their everyday, like immediately gets Poems While You Wait. And then, you know, just a little bit about sort of like how we've weathered these last couple of years. You know, we started, like I said, way back in 2011. You can go to our site and see all the places we've been. In the pandemic, we had to pivot like everyone else, and we went remote so people could email us topics, and we would do it that way. And I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, it was better than nothing. It was better than literal nothing, but only slightly. And we're so happy that now we can be back in person, because I think one of the big things about Poems While You Wait is being in real space with people. And you know, online you can get a topic, but when you're face to face with someone and they want a poem about their dog, and they're at a street festival or, you know, at a museum or somewhere, and they can like take their dog out and be like, here's my Shih Tzu, and then you're writing for that Shih Tzu that's right there with you, you know, or like this family, you know, like to get a topic from this family. With 3 boys at the MCA on Family Day, we do a 1 per household thing, because our supply often cannot meet the demand, which is exciting. So we do 1 per household. So that's how you end up getting topics like, I think this is like fire truck, dinosaur, outer space, a combo deal. And it's a different experience getting that when these people are there in front of you versus when, you know, you're getting it through a screen and you're like, you know, you talk to the kid about why he loves fire trucks or whatever. So I think that's my spiel for now. And like I said, you know, anything we didn't get to, we'll cover in the Q&A, and you're about to hear from 3 more great speakers. But we all decided that we would share a poem, one of our favorites. And so this is one that I wrote at the Chicago History Museum happy hour. And so I'll just read it. But they asked for a poem about bourbon, I think, because that's what was being served. And I was like, yes, it's a great topic. So bourbon is tasty, bourbon is tawny, bourbon is not for the emotionally scrawny. As Joan Didion knows, it's for elegant ladies, pale and doomed, and swilling it in shady rooms with terrible men. Then again, it's also low-key fun with friends and sweaty tumblers next to the jukebox at Simon's, all with Clark Street rumbling outside. So that's my thing.
Well, we can start with my poem, I guess, and then I'll get into a little bit more about the community that we were building. So this was from the Intuitive Art Center. Eric and I did just a 2-person, and the topic was existential dread, I believe, and that was great. That was, you know, I had a lot to go on, and what I did with this one, and the reason I wanted to share this one is, and I'll get to this a little later, I'm a tinkerer. Like, I really spend a lot of time on every little, I try to always make everything look perfect. I did it with this one. I just started writing, and 6 minutes in, this is what came out. And I just gave it, and it's just, I think, one of the poems that I really hold near and dear to my heart. I don't want to necessarily read it right now because it's kind of a longer one. And I don't want to take up too much time, but this was, I think, you want me to read it? All right. All right, so, but why? And what are we doing? I don't remember what it was before I did it. And since then, I've been a paper chip, falling, lazy, and always knowing that every day is my last. And if that is true, we begin to know it's false. I've done some thinking and drinking about the brave men who decided whatever's next isn't so bad. Not willfully, but gracefully, all the same. This seed is warm, but I still feel cold. And as I hurtle towards tomorrow, I can't help but wonder why today could ever matter. It's like kiss you and say yeah. So or creating this thing. Proud. That's proud. So yes, that's the one I definitely want to share. And really, what I want to talk about now with all of you, first off, thank you for being here. Thank you to Evanston Art Center for having us. This is a really great opportunity. And truly, this all has been a great opportunity. So when we talk about Antwerp and Kathleen brought up, that was my first real experience. I remember being with my now wife, Kate, who had already had a famous Kathleen with me poem. And I had seen it in her apartment, and I thought, well, that didn't make sense at the time. I wasn't sure. And we went to Adler a couple months later, and there they were. There's 5 of them. I don't remember exactly who was there. Definitely the 2 you date, for sure. I remember lingering a little bit, didn't want to make eye contact, wanted to be reading a little bit of the poems to see, like, how legit is this? You know, and maybe if you see us, you might think that too, like, they have these typewriters, and they only write it in 15 minutes. Surely it can't be, anything that you want to hold on to. But I saw it, and I was really impressed right out of the gate. So I knew I wanted to be a part of the community because I had studied poetry in college, and then I switched gears and I got my MFA in fiction writing. So it's completely a different part of the brain. I mean, it's still writing, but it's a little different. So, well, I'll get back to that in a second, but really what I wanted to do is just be a part of this group because I was really looking for a community in Chicago, specifically a writing community. I know there's different ways you could do it. I could have gone back to grad school. I could have taught, like a lot of everybody up here teaches. I could have joined a writing club, like a kind of informal workshop. Something just didn't seem right about any of those. And this really seemed like something I wanted to be a part of. And 2016 kind of started winding down. A lot was happening all over. And I just sent an email, not even to an email address. I sent it to a Tumblr account. So I couldn't find an email address. And sure enough, it brought me on. My first event was actually a Dose Market, December of 2016. I've been just rolling through ever since. And community is really what I was looking for. And what was also really cool is a lot of people who may be artists, who are artists in here, know that a lot of times it's a very solitary life. In grad school, I always talk about this, where we truly wrote all day, and then we get together at night, every night. We have some drinks or go to the movies, and generally not really talk about writing, but we still had that community, and we knew that we were supporting each other, even when we were alone. And anybody who's had to, work on a short story or a poem or any sort of piece of art understands that there are times where you just don't want to be sitting alone. And it's really nice to have people that understand that. And I found that immediately out of the gate with this group. I found some people I consider to be some of my best friends. We're not really always talking about what we're working on. I mean, we will, of course, but a lot of times we're just trying to just keep the community going and keep growing it. So that's definitely been my takeaway from a community perspective, is taking something that's very insular and making it a little bit more on the outside and giving it back. And it's really shaped the way that I write too. I've noticed. So as a fiction writer, I sit around and I worry about the opening sentences, or how do I want to work in this character. For months, honestly, I'll sit for months. I don't, none of us have that luxury when you're at a art fair or a birthday party, and we say 15 minutes, and we always deliver in 15 minutes. So I don't get to sit. I crop it up. I bet if I sat with this again, I would just be writing the whole thing, and it would just be completely different. But I couldn't, and I'm really happy I did, because I think it worked out pretty well. So, as somebody from a fiction perspective, it's nice to kind of be forced to write outside my comfort zone and to know that it's a shared experience with the person who's requesting it. So it's not just their poem, it's not just my poem. We sort of met in the middle. They came with the idea and the energy, and I kind of met that energy, or tried to meet that energy, give them something, but also with quality. And that's only been growing for me specifically, and I can only speak for myself on that, but I think maybe we all feel that way too. The more you do it, it becomes a little bit more of a muscle. An idea can be more fully formed more quickly than maybe before. My first couple of events, I was filling up the whole thing. You'd be like just glad, because I was trying to make these like little short stories for everybody. Because, and this is something that you've all talked about on stage, and maybe I've talked with a couple of you. It gets, to me at least, it was very much like this metaphor about the gumball machine, where anytime somebody would come up and we would make, they would write it and they'd, I'm going to be your poet. I was always trying to engage what flavor they wanted. And I always wanted to give them exactly what they wanted. And sometimes to the detriment of the poem, actually. I mean, sometimes I will be trying so hard to write about their 3 grandsons in a way that wasn't authentic to anybody. So therefore now they had a piece that maybe wasn't authentic to them. I started shedding that a little bit and said, okay, well, they're still getting a gumball, and at least the gumball they get, I think they're gonna like it because I like what I did. And that was a very big thing for me, especially, again, coming from something so subjective and can be so insular, and now having this community with the people who are requesting. So, yeah, I don't want to belabor that point too much. I know Andrea has a lot more.
And if they don't like it, we'll join the club of the return home poets.
Yes, I think we all probably.
Be sure to ask about that in the Q&A.
Yes, that's a perfect cue.
It's a spicy topic.
I'm all set.
All right, so, oh no, you're good. I just want to, all right, here, and Dre, you have a couple, so let me know if you
All right, let me know if you can't hear me. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. I want to first talk about what type of community brings, specifically for me, multiple ways. I think it's a type of refraction in multiple directions. And the first one is coming from Kathleen, who was my former poetry professor. And she invited me to be part of this group when I came back from my MFA in middle school in New York. And my second one is about wandering and wonder. And the wandering occurs when we've got people who are so excited to experience poetry with us. And it's unexpected. They weren't thinking they were going to get it. And they're going to wander around in space for 10-15 minutes. And then it's the wonder as their eyes migrate around our keys as they see us type. Sometimes it's getting personal in our spaces, especially when it's in person. And we, I know for me anyway, I'm sure introvert here, can get a little uncomfortable for me, but then it's also this type of intimate space. And to me, that experience is fleeting. It's a fleeting moment, similar to when I'm thinking of a poem for someone that I didn't expect to make that day, a topic I didn't expect to encounter. And so this theme of being unexpected, I think, goes on both ways. And that's a type of dialogic experience for me. And then the type of anticipation for both of us, me like thinking of sound, meter, as a poet, but also the anticipation for them to be super excited to read a poem. And they're more attentive. Sometimes they read them out loud to us. And for me, it's teaching me how to be human all the time. It's a gift of anticipation, but also the gift to see that making mistakes is beautiful. Imperfection is beautiful. And sometimes they're charmed by some of my typos that can occur, and it's like charming moments, and this word that Kathleen had mentioned, enchantment. I think that it adds a type of character. And that's really big for me. I also teach the secondary level teacher writing at DePaul, also where my undergrad, and my Kathleen teaches from. And I see that in the classroom. I'm constantly making mistakes. Trial and error, scientific method here, thinking what's going to work for a student, what's going to work in a poem. And then also, they're unexpectedly excited to encounter language because I teach writing, but really it's poetry, even though it's composition, which can be boring maybe, but it's an experience and it's a dialogue in that way where we're both learning and we're both switching up positions, literally, as we move around the room, we do a lot of walking and observations together, but also figuratively, and just as Alex mentioned, it's beyond the self. This example, I won't read this one, I have one I did want to read. One person who was a customer of poetry, a consumer of poetry, actually drew this photo at one of the events at Garfield Conservatory. And he asked me to write a poem based on this photo. And it was almost like the reverse of a topic, and I actually did the images, so it was like really nice to kind of have an image instead of a word that day. Kathleen, if you don't mind switching out. And then in this poem, and I will read Traveling in just a moment, I'm thinking about how the learning process is very much a creative process. there are different types of traveling of the mind, traveling of sound and language, but also traveling of an experience on both different levels. Sometimes for me, and this is what I think is a learning experience, even for me too, I will come and I'll make a line, I'll make a phrase that I really love, and then I'll end up taking that later, so I get to have it too, even though it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else. And I think that's beautiful, because it's usually when we get our requests, they're not for themselves. Sometimes they are, it's okay if they are, but they're usually for someone. And when I'm thinking of what it means to be a poet, a lot of it for me is managing fear, managing imperfection, and letting myself make mistakes. And I think that, to me, is what it means to be human. And I think I do that definitely a lot in the classroom, make mistakes. And I'll read traveling. Traveling. Do you ever think about the sound of language, migrating, vibrations, constant battle, at the interconnection of time and space? And to me, poems while you wait manipulates time and space, because when we're anticipating something, it's like time stops, but then it's fast and slow all at the same time. So we're outside of time, together, if that makes sense, if you're with me. And my last thing I'll end is this type of personal poetic sensibility. And I think that is not just management of fear, but also it's the willingness to encounter the unknown. And that becomes really the curriculum for all of us, whether we're in a classroom or outside of the classroom.
Visual aids.
There we go.
Put that there. Been reunited. Get you a raffle ticket. Yes, there will be a very exciting raffle. Conclusion. Yeah, don't get your hopes up. It's not till Alexis outside. So let's do the image that I had. Stop share. Waiting on the cursor. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like we planned this story. It's London. That's Kathleen gazing, mostly sad, not so much funny sad, through the window of the last typewriter repairman in Chicago. We had gone into a nursing home, we learned, a few months before this. His shop was still there and empty. That was Steve Cashmere on Montrose, some of you may remember it, just off Ashland. That was 2012, I think, 2013.
Long time.
Yeah, yeah. And when someone like that gets lost, you know, a hack like me does not fill their shoes. You know, these guys were Zen masters. Yeah. And so, a duck, a typewriter, and Steve Wozniak walk into a bar. The duck begins to space out. The typewriter turns to the duck and says, "Oh, no, not again." The duck says, "Yeah. Okay, what is it this time?" The duck says, "Well, I had another vision. But I'm not sure I should tell you." The typewriter says, "Come on, I can't leave us hanging." He says, "Okay. It's 10 years from now. 1985. See, it's 1975 in the bar. Evergreen is playing on the jukebox. It's 1985. You were dead. seems a little melodramatic. I mean, come on. Tired skyscrapers so big. I just, I don't know if your visions really pan out. I don't want to diss your duck turns to it and says, "What, are you calling me Daffy?" That was my punchline. Throughout all this, Wozniak is kind of part spacing out, part kind of shaking his head. Well, listen, guys. And both the typewriter and duck turn to Wozniak in unison. They say, "Listen, dude, get a job." That was a punchline. I'll never forget it. So, this precious thing here is going to be the star of this talk. And I titled this talk, "Ode to Obsolescence." Is that the right spelling? Because that was my third attempt. Okay, great. No?
No.
Yeah? Okay, close enough. I subtitled this.
It's a charming error.
Close enough. This isn't on camera, is it? I subtitled this, "Out with the New, In with the Old." And I subtitled it, "If the University of Chicago is where fun goes to die, is this here where fun comes to live?" Sure as hell hope so. The brainchild of this was an event we did a couple of events ago in Hyde Park. No coincidence. It was a great event at Park Art Center, was it? A literary event. Sometimes we don't do as good at literary events as we do at street fets. You know, oh, I write poems too, sort of thing. But these poets like really brought their own spirit of poetry and love of it, wonder and celebration. Actually got poems from us. About 2/3 of the way through, I was off in the hallway because I was getting self-conscious about the noise that Silver Sky here was making. And this gentleman kind of approached, and he walked over and sort of stopped. And his exact words were, "Typewriters? Really?" I said, yeah, typewriters. You know, typing poems for people in there, and they're requesting. Listen to my little explanation. Why typewriters? I'm kind of slow on the uptake, so I was just started to explain our rationale. So I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to try to not directly answer that question. Maybe some people who are listening, maybe you all have your own theories on this. Bring it up at the questions or put them in the comments below. I walked away after my explanation. About 10 minutes later, he's coming back around. I swear to God, he stopped right in front of me. He's like, "Why typewriters?" And at that point, I just sort of shook my head and said, "You know, man." He walked on, and we both smiled at each other. And at first, I kind of got, usual typewriter enthusiast, all defensive about it. Then I thought, no, it's a really good question. Why typewriters? We get two reactions to us universally at every event. And one is if there are kids there, kids run towards us. And they just intuitively celebrate the typewriter. Then we get oldsters like me. We grew up with them, we went to middle school, we learned how to type in middle school. And they, again, universally bring kind of this sweet nostalgia. The funny thing is that they almost always recount using the typewriter for things that they truly disliked. And yet there was sweet nostalgia there. And I don't think we can think of too many tools and technologies where that's true, where you use it in circumstances that you did not enjoy at the time, and yet you have sweet memories. The typewriter pretty much stands alone. But this guy at Hyde Park brought this third type of wonder, this kind of wonderment, a totally befuddled wonderment, which honestly I have not had expressed to me that directly. We had the intuitive celebratory wonderment. We definitely had the sweet nostalgic wonderment of seeing them again, hearing them again. We often hear about the sound of them. But total befuddled wonderment. And I thought it was wonderful. It made me think, why typewriters? Why are typewriters almost singled out for this befuddlement when you see someone using them? And other things are not. Not that the typewriter doesn't deserve it, but maybe the other things do as well. That there is a wonderment that gets lost. So, that's really two dates you need to remember. Does anybody know out there when the modern typewriter was invented, roughly?
Late 1800s, maybe?
That's right. So, a guy named Carlos Glidden, 1868, patented the first modern typewriter, considered a typewriter today. It was then made by Remington and sold in 1873. So let's just call it 1873. And then this little beauty, it's the Corona Skywriter, the greatest street poetry typewriter ever made. And don't trust me, you can trust Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks' asked what his desert island typewriter would be. And he has hundreds of typewriters, far more collectible than this. Far more collectible. This is sort of the Chevy Impala of typewriting. He chose this one because he uses typewriters and he knows the feel, he knows what it accomplishes, and he knows that it's 9 pounds. This one was 1953. So I can do the math here. That's 150-ish years ago. Is that right? How much? 100 no, from now.
Oh, from now. Oh, yeah.
Is that closer?
Yeah.
Don't assume poets can't do that. These are about 70-ish, or about 80 years apart, and then this one is about 70 years from now. I'm wondering, does anybody, I have some cheat notes, because my memory is bad. Does anybody drive a car? I see a show of hands. When was the internal combustion engine? First internal combustion engine car. 1885. I'm wondering, when you're driving your car, do people come knocking on the window going, why an internal combustion engine? I don't think they do. Now, for the NPR crowd out there, it's going, what about our hybrids? What was the first hybrid car? They surprisingly know. It was 1899. 1899. To the Tesla fans out there, first all-electric car, 1890. Battery technology hadn't achieved its apex yet. Again, why typewriters? Why car? Does anybody ride a bike? Okay. When was the modern bicycle, the one that we think of with the 2 wheels that are roughly the same? $1817. Is anyone chasing you down going, what the hell's with the bike? I took a train, I believe runs on electricity, first electric public transit, 1888. And then I walked here. That's 3.6 million years old, give or take. Nobody stopped me and said, why feet? Again, why is the typewriter singled out as this audio? And I think there are some obvious answers, but then he stopped and noticed the typewriter. These are things we use every day. They have just as much lineage, just as much history of human invention. We don't wonder about it. Now, I could have taken this guy out for a beer. The science of artistry. Budweiser was, I think, invented in 1876. I can't remember the last time I was taking a swig from a Budweiser and somebody stopped and said, why Budweiser? Why beer? The bottle here, the brown screw top bottle, there were previous bottles in the 1600s, but the screw top bottle was 1879. This is a thing of wonder as much as the typewriter, but nobody is kind of paying it attention. They're sort of going along with it. We could have gone out to some Chinese food. If you are a fan of the chopsticks, I had to look this up. 400 BC. You're a few years off. Or if you're on Team Fork, 480 to be. Who's using chopsticks and saying, why chopsticks? We could have gone to Starbucks, got a coffee and a cookie. Would anyone have walked up to us and, oh my God, are you eating a cookie? Otherwise known, by the way, as test cakes when they were first invented. They were little blobs of cake that they used as test cakes. That would be I'm not sure I have it here. A long ass time ago. Hundreds and hundreds of years. 400 AD. I remember. Roughly. Took another 200 years for coffee to be the first cup of coffee. And then another 300 or so years, I think, for the first barista to bring it to you. These are things that are in our life and magical, deserving as much wonderment as the typewriter. I'll show you some things that are truly obsolete. Flip phone, still usable. Invented in 1996. Still usable. These not so much. iPhone 3, 2008. Totally unusable. Brick. The iPhone 4, 2010. Takes pictures. The iPhone 5, 2012. There's not an app for that. The iPhone 6, 2015, and so on and so forth. Not once I had somebody come up with sweet nostalgia or instant celebratory wonderment for those. Why typewriters? Thank you. And I'm going to go.
Change it to
Yeah.
Oh, you repaired
Yeah,
it? You repaired it?
yeah.
I can't replace it.
I think you might say it.
Okay. Play. Okay, try it. All right, so this was requested by a writer who said that she had this topic and hated it, so I couldn't wait to jump at it. And her topic was badass poem. The sound of something splitting like a ripe melon. Los Angeles never smelled more like a Superfund site. And your kiss was sleazy as the early 70s. Maybe your childhood was long. Maybe the desert isn't as dead as television tells us. Maybe we're all just dying for this post-apocalypse to finally end. Thank you. Answer the question. I'm going to hand it out to one artifact. Okay, try both. This event.
And then we have 15 minutes left for Q&A, so hit us with those questions.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat. So 2 questions from Allison to everyone. Are you open to people starting this in other cities? That's number 1. And number 2, you mentioned donations. Is this an org, a nonprofit, or does the money go to the host location?
Yeah, great question. So I'll answer the second one first. So all of our proceeds go to the 501c3 nonprofit Roosevelt Press. So that's a press that I co-run since 2006 with my friend Kathleen. And 2 books a year, so it's very small, in hybrid genres, so image and text, book-length essays, prose poetry, stuff that deserves to be published well, but wouldn't necessarily be super commercial with big publishers. So that's where all of it goes. And that honestly is what helps us get into a lot of places, like without having to, like a lot of places themselves are nonprofits or have their own missions. And if we were for profit, it would be trickier. And then to the question of other cities, yes, we're open to it. And that's the thing to be clear, like we started this Dave brought it up from Miami, but this has been going on in other cities all over the country. Famously, like when people come to us, a lot of times they're like, oh, I saw you guys in New Orleans. And we're like, that wasn't us. But you did. There's a bunch of people who do it in Jackson Square, like outside the Walker bookstore, and then all over the country. So once you start looking for it, it's everywhere. And someone that I think we love to Eric kind of talked about this, who's like a role model for us, is Mark Smith, who's the founder of the Poetry Slam, and he essentially invented that format. And early on, when it started to take off, some of his friends and some people were like, oh, are you going to copyright it or license it or control people doing it in other cities? I think I was 2 years of and said, oh, the more, basically more snaps and move across the country, the better it is for poetry, the better it is for everyone else. So I think we very much on that orientation. So Allison, if you're, I don't know what city you're in, but if your city needs some typewriter, you should like fill that niche.
She's in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis. And she says thank you. I don't other than chat right now. Can you repeat it? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is Kate, our writer. If all of us as poem poets were to choose a topic that we asked another poems volume 8 person to write a poem on, what would we start there?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I'm going to say here. I think that a lot of those spaces, I think that's a huge now I'm going to ask something.
Well, for me, I'll try to keep this succinct as best I can, but for me, I was like receiving topics that are a little more ethereal, maybe a little more sensation based. Like, I got one, and if the sim did it, he wanted something different. And I really wish that he had. Because it was the feeling of honesty. And that was the one topic, and I was yes, and I did this and move on to explore that more sensory based. So maybe that would be actually. And then when we did the record, this one person very in that meeting home very quickly, and I key used this sensory. Very last line is the idea that millisecond when you're trying to come up with a rule, you feel like you're running out of your you're right there. It's just that feeling. And I always want to do more with just that little second feeling. Like, am I going to make it up? Generally, you always do so that it's not sad. So I would say just in general, sensory based.
Yeah, I have gotten from some, one that we did right after, or that I gave right after the summer my friend Kim, was her divorce was just finalized. She's like, I didn't divorce this woman, it's also really great for this, liberatory. So I got her a divorce party, and we collaborated. And because I was going through the summer on South Florida, so that was like I guess I like ones like anti-poems, ones that are on topics that you wouldn't necessarily assume are poetic or you wouldn't necessarily think are stuff like that. Great question.
I guess the flip of that, I am stunned that people have first of all, what kind of monsters? Yeah, I'm like, you doing that contrast and like, and that kind of leads to my other. I was talking a little bit about trying to read the person, get a sense of what sort of poem they're looking for, and whether that wants to be a helpful tactic or not. So yeah, talking about reader response slash illustration.
Yeah, I think, so like I'll tell two stories about the kind of person. One is a story from now. Many people are getting this gift. So it was December of 2016, it was just market, and somebody was getting a birthday home for their sister. And I was talking about birthdays to be a baby, and I had a line in there like everyone was to be a baby, even Einstein, even Hillary Clinton. And she returned it because she was like, she also she was like clearly horrified, and she was like, I can't do this to my sister because she's full Trump, she's full MAGA. And if I give her a compliment, it'll be like a fight. And so can you change it? And so I was like, is Beyonce okay? So I just retyped it and I'll send it to Beyonce. So sometimes it's something like that. But I would say is also this market and this person about gratitude. And David answered her asked if the founder wrote it, and he had something. He was kind of a list of things he was grateful for, and he had copy cards in there. And the one that was just outraged. She was having gratitude. And then she said she wrote an article about gratitude. So she was like, I'm a gratitude expert. And you're not really copy cards. And it was just like a real, like, speak to the manager moment. And I offered, I was like, we can. But then what we do is we don't have time. We give you your money back. It's only $5 in the deal. Or we can redo it. Or poet write it, change the part. And she got very like, I need to say, no, I'll leave it here. You can pay. And then we did. And someone else came by and I said, it was like, well, all these parts can't have this. So, I don't know. Everyone wants to do all stuff. Set it down.
Yeah, actually, this. Addendum to that story. That was 1 hour in my very first day. I was just bored. I thought it made sense. She was yelling, and then she was basically saying what we were doing was a joke. I was like, I was so excited. But then it didn't have any. For a very long time, we didn't have any. It was not. It was just we was never.
Well, you and I were writing posts going, this was absolutely
See, so I actually I wanted to record one return and one from out while that's what I got.
Yeah.
And I did it. The first one was definitely a one-wall situation. Like she wanted food really badly, and I only had her for it. And it went very poorly, and she didn't handle it the way that was going. She would, I tried to rewrite it, and she said no, threw it out. That was one. The other one, I think it was almost an outlet. It was a guy just really read it. It was just like, I hate you. Like, I hate what you did. Threw it out and walked down the stairs. I think we were at it wasn't Andy, we were there. It was when we split off. I was like upstairs or something. So yeah, that does happen, and I don't really know. I can't imagine going to this. And for $5, like if we were charging like 30, I'd say maybe this is the time to be able to set. I mean, we're just charging $5. Sometimes you know, it just depends. I don't know what you're.
They're rare.
It's rare. It's not something that happens often. I would say you've gone. At least I've gone and really.
We've had posts returning free. Sometimes they still put one word in, and they're gone. So I got one in silver. I love silver. I love silver. Lots of living, wear silver. And those women, so sort of the son on. Spouses, right? All they have left is the silver. It was sad, obviously, the husband died. There's a short silver anniversary. Her husband. What's in that? Another one was in a library. What was the topic? She's 88. Becky's 88. So, from a personal point of view, it's funny, sad. They were expecting a very specific, there's young brother, none of that was in the top. So that, you know, to be fair to the returners, so that means it's just a miscommunication. And in the post-market, of course, the artisan markets are already buying artisan gifts. It's all well sold. They're not always people's choice. It's really artisan here.
I will add, I won't share a war story, but I will say, I think this is part of engagement coaching, whether it's super excited, enthusiastic response, or if it's like a disgust response. And I think for me, I think while there are the polar opposites, I'm here to put commitment to have a response. And to me, reaction or engagement. And I think that ties into the curiosity piece of motivates as well. And I think that's also how we use form. Right now, we're all laughing together, and I think we're sure we need to happen. That's again small moments. Just this, and it makes us all like, oh yeah, all part of the space together. It's inclusive, follow basic experience. That's quite the opposite.
Yeah. It's like the poets are overreacting when the parts wins and saying, how is this crap? It's not poetry. Really, really angry. And like this, and that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and one more story too that I think speaks to like positive sometimes of people rejecting and like why we like it in person as opposed to remote, is because you're really like engaging with the person if that person wants to engage. And so one time it was just again, And I think so many of these stories come because it's artisanal, because it's high volume. These are events where we read like 112 poems in a day. So it's just like you do something over and over again, you're gonna get to outcomes. But this woman came up and she was like, I need a poem. She's like, having her time with my husband. And she was like, kind of funny sad. She's like, I need a poem that's gonna save my marriage long. And we were like, oh, heavy. So Logan, who's not here, but it was great. Logan wrote a poem and he wrote this like super sexy poem with like a dildo in it. And he was like, I'm gonna save your marriage. And the woman came back and was like, I cannot talk about dildos with my husband. And we were like, your marriage can't be saved. Like we're just like, this is like clearly we can't all have a problem for you. And we like talked about like, well, what is it? Like what's going on? And so it turned into like this weird therapy session. Like, what's wrong? What would you rather have? And so I rewrote it. Flowers in it. It was a really beautiful romantic poem, but I don't think it was a marriage saver. So it's just stuff like that. So it's like we weren't mad at her. We had sympathy for her, compassion for her, and she was really like close to fixing her problem, but not. I mean, really probably our poems aren't going to save everyone's marriage, but like she was so close, and that moment we got to see her so vulnerable. And it was like, I don't know. So they're not all like negative stories.
Our poems has as good a chance to make it say that.
Yeah.
I still have that poem. She returned it, she did not take her out. She left it there, snagging that.
And I think that's also part of it. Even when we see stuff that's maybe not so pretty, one way I think we can be amazing. And I think that confronting them as a patient is important. Reading or reading page to the population.
90 episodes. I've been laughing. At least 3 or 4.
Yeah, interesting. I think about that is sort of I think maybe what you're saying too. I've definitely gotten more hugs from people than I have like negative reactions. How many times have we actually gotten people they words and you felt something engaged in the way that I'm always trying to do.
Because we don't exist without the requesters.
It's shared.
We can do it now. That's our favorite purpose. We take all of that.
And I think we have one more quick question. One more. So Tony.
Do I have a dream location before?
Yeah, I love that question. I'll start because I'm thinking about it. Oh yeah, a dream location to homes while you wait. I would love to do it on like a boat in Lake Michigan. Because there's all these like fun cruises. So I would love to go on just like write poems for all the people.
I really like that one too. I've always really enjoyed pretty much anywhere we've gone because it's generally someplace new. I've gotten to explore a lot of places in Chicago specifically that I probably wouldn't. So that's hard. I'm going
to say and summertime. I love just
no wind.
no, that's a homeschooling.
Yeah.
Anywhere that isn't mom. So, winner
Oh, the raffle.
will receive the original version of the triangle signed by mom. So this is you can do it. I made that up. That was on royalty 2. So the last typewriters not when I evolved. So chopsticks. Someone who knows this one. All right, the winner is 2, 3, 3, 9, 1, 5, 3.
Oh.
2, 3, 3, 9, 1,
All right. I just want to thank everyone, and that's a really generous offer. I have a lot of typewriter stories also because I'm an older person, and this electric changed my life. And but that's a topic for another day.
Selectors, most typewriter repair people have contracts. And hilariously, business, independent business machines. So we're not